The reason for Michaela today is we felt this year especially has been so bad for just upping everybody's anxiety levels, that it was so important to see what help could we bring to ourselves when there is little or no access to clinical help on this side. So Michaela, over to you. I can certainly see your screen, so the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, so as Kevin has said, I've spoken before about anxiety, but particularly wanted to go into more detail this time about the tools that you can use to try and help yourself with the anxiety response. First and foremost, and probably the most important thing, is that an anxiety response is perfectly normal and it is completely natural. I'll explain why it happens very briefly, and also add into the thing about the whole pandemic that, yeah, is impacting on absolutely everybody in all sorts of ways. But I'll try and put most of my time into looking at the strategies that you can do at home with each other to try and help with the anxiety response. Again, it is normal. It is a survival response, and it is so important. It's what's kept us alive all this time. And it's something that we either learn through our very own experience, that if you touch a radiator when it's hot and you burn your hand, you learn not to do that again because it causes a lot of pain. Or you can watch somebody else burn themselves on the radiator and learn it's probably not a good idea to touch these kinds of things. So it can be learned either way. The anxiety response is a physical response coming from within your body and within your brain, and it triggers these sensations and the feelings that you have. So just a very quick one, and hopefully Kevin will be able to put this full picture on the website so you can have a look at it to your own timing. But this gives you an idea of exactly what's happening and where within the fight and flight response, which is that anxiety response. Your thoughts start to race, you start to get changes to your vision, you can get tunnel vision, where you start to kind of rule out everything else that's going around you apart from the one thing that you're really concentrating on. Your mouth can go dry, you can start talking a lot quicker as the anxiety is up. Your breathing becomes quicker and shallower, and that in turn causes feelings of dizziness and lightheadedness. Your heart's beating faster, you can feel quite sick, butterflies in your tummy, get feelings of either cold hands or sweaty palms, and your muscles start to get tense, and you start to get that kind of quivering feeling in your body. How you interpret what you are feeling has a massive effect on how you then respond to it. So actually looking at how you're interpreting what you're feeling can have a big impact on the management of your anxiety and dealing with it hopefully in a better way. So what are these sensations again? So the increase in heart rate, you're feeling like your heart's jumping out your chest, or just that real quivering in your chest. The short breaths, the hyperventilation. And hyperventilation is not that over-dramatized thing that you see on TV. It's when your breathing is getting shorter and shallower. And it's something that we see an awful lot, and we do it completely subconsciously, but it brings on dizziness. It also causes feelings of tingling in your lips and your fingers, that lightheadedness. Poor concentration and memory. We're not paying as much attention to lots of other things that are going on, so we don't remember them. The butterflies in your tummy, the dry mouth, that feeling of sickness, the oversensitivity to certain things, and that hypervigilance. You start looking out for where the threat is coming from. You feel like that's that horrible feeling of doom, something terrible is going to happen or is happening. Jelly legs, we see this ever such a lot in the Balance Clinic. That description is such a good one of that feeling that you get in your limbs. And it increases the dizziness. And obviously, a lot of you will be familiar with a lot of these feelings just from the dizziness itself in the first place as well. Particularly with balance disorders, there's very different sorts of sensations that you get that you are not used to, and it's triggering these sort of anxiety sensations to bring your attention to it. By bringing your attention to the fact that something is not right within your body, gives you that motivation to deal with it, to go to the doctor, to try and find out what's wrong and what needs to be done. But an anxiety response should be a short-term response. It's called a fight or flight response, not a keep going, keep going, keep going response. We're supposed to have something happen, deal with it, and then rest and recover and go back to how things were. The big difficulty with balance conditions is that these things are happening day in, day out, and different triggers can happen on different days, which makes it a lot more unpredictable. This causes a lot of fear, particularly with movements, particularly with things that make you feel that dizziness sensation. That creates that extra anxiety, and then that feelings of anxiety adds into the feelings of dizziness, which makes the anxiety increase, and it goes into a vicious circle very, very quickly. Now, balance is done completely subconsciously. It's like you're breathing, it's like your heart beating. You don't take any notice of it at all. It just does it, and it does it really well until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, then our whole sense of self can be completely thrown into array as to what our understanding is and our belief in ourselves of what we are able to do. And this is really frightening. That sudden fear of, if I can't do this, can I do my job? If I can't do my job, I can't provide for my family. If I can't provide my family, what am I going to do? And it is a very threatening feeling. Your brain is working really, really hard, not only to try and work out what's going on with your balance, but also to try and establish exactly what threats there are and how to deal with them. And this is really tiring. It takes so much work just to try and keep on top of your balance, because it's brought up to a conscious level than subconscious, and it doesn't do that quite as efficiently. But it's also the physical movements that you're trying to do, all the other things you're trying to deal with. It's tiring. Those things that you were able to do so easily before, you're having to put a lot of thought into now, a lot more effort, and it is tiring. And it's the simple things. It can be just going for a walk, doing the daily tasks that you do at work that you've done in, day out so easily, so much harder. Socializing, it becomes an effort to try and make yourself understood by people. And you don't know if it's going to get better, if it's going to get worse, or what on earth you're going to do about any of it. And add on top of that, the pandemic. Now, this is absolutely the most stressful thing that our generation has dealt with, and has probably been since World War II. And it has affected absolutely everything. It is made much, much worse by the media response. You can't turn on the radio or the TV without it being essentially rammed down your throats at how awful everything is. And we don't know what's going to happen. So you've already got that isolation from your balance, the things that you feel unable to do. But with the pandemic now, everybody around you is unable to do a lot of things as well. So although you may have been isolated from your balance and been quite sort of restricted at home, people could still come and see you. Now with the pandemic, that's not the case. And again, this adds into that anxiety. There's more to deal with, and we get overloaded and overwhelmed. As you're all, I'm sure, very, very aware, there's not enough balance people to try and help you all as much as we would like to. And that makes access to the treatment difficult. And with the addition of COVID, we've had to shut down for a good period of time. We don't know when we're going to get to full capacity again, but it has put a massive backlog on things. But we are open and we are working towards getting on top of this. And the one question that I'm hearing an awful lot is, will I be affected more with COVID with having a balance disorder? And the simple answer to that is no. There is no evidence to that whatsoever. So please take away from this that you are normal. It is okay to feel what you're feeling. And actually, it's a lot more unusual to have no anxiety, because you're having no anxiety, there is no emotional response to what's happening, and there's something not quite right there either. Ooh, that's gone big. So what can we actually do about our toolkit? First and foremost, we need to look at how you translate your feelings, because this will have a big impact on how you respond to them. You can then, once you've translated in a more suitable fashion, hopefully, you can learn ways to direct or to manage these responses. It's important to build your environment around you suitably, and anything that you can do that helps with any other health issues will always be very helpful also. So translation of your feelings. I see an awful lot of people that completely deny having any anxiety response to what they're feeling. That everything they're having is purely down to their balance, which, as you've seen from the things before, a lot of the feelings overlap. There will be some anxiety, and if you are fighting against the anxiety, it's going to cause a lot more problems. So sometimes being able to sit back to say, okay, yes, I'm struggling at the moment or today, and acknowledging what you're feeling can help you start to deal with it. Ideally, if you're able to identify what the trigger is it that you rolled over in bed and the world has spun? Is it that actually you've just had a huge row with your partner and you're really upset? Is it that you're feeling really, really unwell with another health condition? And being able to kind of put the blame where it lies can help start to reduce that vicious cycle. What you're feeling, is it actually affecting you here and now? Is that trigger something that you are thinking, but if I don't do this at work tomorrow, then the boss is going to be really angry, and if the boss is really angry, this is going to happen and that's going to happen? And are you projecting and worrying about something that actually isn't happening? Or is actually the thing that's happening and what you're experiencing, that trigger, is that something right in front of you and that is needing dealing with now? And is it something that is actually within your control? If it's not something that you can control, then the one thing that you can control with that is your response to it. If it is within your control, is it the trigger that needs to be tackled, or is it how that you're responding in that moment in time, what needs to be tackled? Now, again, hopefully Kevin will be able to put this picture up on the website. The circle of control, we all try and control or think that we can control what other people do, what is going on in the world around us. And actually what we have control over is ourselves. What you think, your behavior, your reactions, your decisions. The decisions, the behavior, the actions of other people, you can influence them to a degree, but they are not within your control. And worldwide issues, many of it you can't influence. So essentially, and to put it very simply, it's something you need to let go of. Taking control of your responses. I'll just come back to that one. I'll just think of an example, taking control of your responses. I saw a gentleman quite some time ago that at work he was having a lot of stress that was adding into his imbalance, and his description of it to me was that all the people that were working for him were asking really stupid questions, and it was really getting on his nerves, and he was getting quite irate because he couldn't understand why they were asking such stupid questions when they were perfectly capable. And we looked into what was within his control and how he was responding. We looked into how he can't control the responses of his staff, but he could control how he was taking things. We looked at other ways as to how he could interpret what he was completely set on being stupid questions. And with some work on this, we did actually make ever such a lot of progress when he realised that these stupid questions might actually be coming from a different place beyond what he was deeming stupidity. Maybe that these staff were trying to make sure they were doing the correct job so that everything went smoothly. Maybe they had other things going on and they just needed that reassurance. When he had that other view on his responses, he altered it, and it made such a difference. And the next time I saw him, so much more relaxed and wasn't having the issues at work, because he wasn't getting irate at the questions. He was coming from a more understanding viewpoint. So other ways of taking control of your responses. Now, the short-term relief ones, they all require practice. There is no quick fix, make everything just turn off. First and foremost is the 7-11 breathing technique. Now, I've discussed this previously, and I give this to pretty much all the people that I see, and it's one that I do myself as well. You may not have noticed whilst Kevin was introducing me, I was doing this technique. The 7-11 breathing technique, or essentially the longer out than in, is just to help reduce that shallow breathing. And that in turn reduces the anxiety response and the hyperventilation and the dizziness that causes. Quite self-explanatory. It's purely a very simple, really gentle, long breath in through the nose, and an even longer, more gentle breath out through the nose. And ideally, it's so gentle that if you put your hand underneath your nose, you wouldn't feel your breath coming out. But it's longer out than in is the important part. Now, you practice this whilst you are feeling pretty calm, pretty okay, until you get quite comfortable with being able to do it and how it feels. And it's then something you can start to introduce when you're starting to notice that you're getting through a stressful situation and that you're starting to increase that breathing. You can tone it down with this technique. Mindfulness is wonderful. There's lots of apps on this. There's all sorts of books and things on YouTube. And it's something that it helps stop that, but what if this happens? What if that happens? What if that happens? It teaches you how to bring your mind back into the actually what's happening right now. Deal with the right now, because all the things that I'm thinking of the what if may never happen. Looking at positives, there should be a comma there. It's very, very easy to discount the positives and concentrate on the negatives or the what was happening. The past has gone. You can't change that. What you can change is the what is, and hopefully what will be in a hopeful way. Externally, hypnotherapy can be really, really effective for the deeper triggers, the more ingrained fears or beliefs that may be wrong, that we may have mistaken. And we have had an awful lot of good responses from that, I mean, some of them have really amazed me. Your environment. So I've spoken in Tool 2 about what's actually going on inside and what you can do for you. But your activities will have an impact with your anxiety also. It's very, very common that if we're in a very stressful situation, that we start to put all our thoughts and efforts into dealing with those stressful things, to try and deal with them and to get rid of them. And we stop doing the things that we enjoy doing. And with some of the balance issues, it may be that you're not able to do the things that you enjoyed doing before in the way that you were doing them. But it is absolutely essential that you find ways to do something that you enjoy doing, even if it's for a very short period in the day, and gradually increase this. Physical movement. I know this is a really hard one when you've got balance problem. But again, it's finding what works for you. Yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, very good and can be easily adapted to the difficulties that you have. If there's particular exercises or sports that you enjoy that you are still able to do, try and do a little bit of it each day. Even just going out for a short walk for 5 minutes will have a big impact on how you feel, but it's got to be done regularly. Keeping yourself mentally alert and occupied stops the brain from getting bored and starting to focus on things that you don't want it focusing on quite so much. So any hobbies that you have, playing games, quizzes, board games with your family if you're able to, things like learning things. There's all sorts of things that are available that you can do online learning. TED Talks are wonderful for finding out and learning about all sorts of different things. Teaching other people skills that you have is really good. It's good for them and it's really, really good for you. It really brings that sort of self-worth feeling back in if you've been starting to lose that. And please reduce your negative influences from the media. I remember I had a lady a while ago that she was so distressed and upset, and that was really feeding into the dizziness that she was having because she was spending so much time watching news on TV. She was so upset by all the different sort of earthquakes and floodings and famine and all these kinds of things on the news in other countries that she had no control over whatsoever and that she was not able to do anything about. But she was really getting herself quite upset about all the suffering from all these people. And it was such a simple solution to say, let's reduce your news watching for twice a day rather than all day, and choose what source you're looking at. You don't need to read it in the papers and flick through all the different news stations. Choose what ones you want to look at and limit the actual duration. And again, the next time I saw her, she was so much happier because she'd reduced that and she was able to focus on things within her own life that she actually really enjoyed and made her happy. All of these things can sound like big, difficult things to do. But the thing that matters is actually you don't have to do it all, and you don't have to do it all the time. You can bring it down to just doing it little bits, but every day. And even just 5 minutes of one thing each day is getting on the road to the right direction. Your health matters. I know it's never very exciting when people tell you to have a sensible diet and drink well, but it really does make a difference. If you're having a poor diet, it's going to cause other issues, and it can also cause that loss of energy, that lethargy. Good diet. Physiotherapy as instructed. We give the exercises in a particular way for a reason, and you'd be amazed at how many times we see people that come and say, well, it's not worked, so I only did it for a week or two and then I stopped. It's not a quick job and it is a lot of hard work on your part, and we do appreciate that, but it does help. But it only helps if you're doing it in the way that we're needing you to do it, the way that we're advising you to do it. But do talk to us if there are particular difficulties with the instructions that we've given, because if you don't tell us, we don't know. A good night's sleep makes all the difference. Tiredness makes everything harder. If I get up in the middle of the night, I'm going to be bouncing down the corridor. That's a perfectly normal response. The brain is designed and needs that time to sleep to try and rest and recuperate, and for it to do a lot of the jobs that we don't realise that it's doing. Please listen to your body and respect it. It is an amazing thing. It's done so much, and it's such an amazing bit of kit. But when we're ignoring the signals that it's sending to us and we fight against it, it's going to essentially scream louder to try and make you pay attention. So give your body the respect that it really does deserve. Yes, it's having a hard time at the moment with the balance, but it's trying really hard to try and do its best to get you back to normal. Any other health conditions will have an impact on how you're feeling with your balance. So it is important that you do treat them and treat them appropriately. It's no good trying to say, well, if I just sort out my balance, everything's going to be fine, when you're a diabetic and you're not taking your insulin as required, which is causing you to have numb feet, which is going to make it difficult to balance when you're standing up. Treat everything as it needs to and get the assistance that you need to do so. Sometimes these things aren't enough. We cannot do everything all by ourselves all of the time. Say there's lots of online help, so apps such as Headspace and Calm. So that's a screenshot just looking on the app store on my phone, and there's a whole host of different ones to try. It's a case of trying things and finding what suits you. And if you try one thing and it doesn't suit you, that's fine. Try something else. Don't let it stop you from trying something else. Support groups, good support groups, make a huge difference. Life on the Level, it is a wonderful supportive group. It is exactly what people need. Being able to talk to people that have similar experiences, that maybe have found ways of dealing with things that they haven't tried. And sometimes just having somebody else to talk to say, yes, I feel that, and understand, makes a big difference. I spoke to somebody very recently that has participated in your member-to-member group and has benefited hugely, not only from being able to speak to somebody that understood them and support them, but also to actually to talk to other people to provide support. And that has really lifted them and given them so much benefit. And from my point of view, I'm really grateful that this supportive group is available to you. So please participate, use it, and help others as well, because that will really help you. Friends and family, talk to them. If they don't know actually what you're feeling and how you want them and how you need them to support you, they can only guess and they can't read your mind. Give them the information that they need to be able to help you as much as they can. And please talk to us, your GP, myself, Professor Ray, Andrew. There's lots of us that are involved in your healthcare. If you're not giving us the information of what you need, we can't guess. We're pretty good at having a good idea of a lot of the things, but these things can be very, very personal to you. Please do talk to us. As we say, there is difficulties at the moment with access, with the waiting lists, particularly with the NHS. Private practice is there and it is an option for you, and a lot of it's not as expensive as you think. You don't have to be covered by insurance, and it's not something you necessarily have to go into and then completely not have access to the NHS. Even if it's just to get 1 or 2 appointments to get you started on things, it can really help and get you on the right path. Everything that you're feeling is a natural response and it is normal. And that is something that you really need to absorb. It is a response to something, and it's okay and can be dealt with. It's not, these feelings that you're getting are not coming out of nowhere, and you are not making them up. It is not all in your head. You are not crazy. It is a natural physical response to something that either your body is experiencing or something external that you're experiencing. You have got a lot of your own tools that you've learned throughout your life of ways to deal with things, and hopefully I've given you a few new ones to try that you'll find effective. But there is always help. That I'm available, there's the support group, there's lots of options. Sometimes we just need to look at different ways of doing things to try and find the right way and to try and find new tools. So I thank you very much for listening. I hope I've not rattled that off too fast or taken a long time, because I know I like to get excited and try and tell people everything. But if you need me, then please do contact me, and I'm here to try and help and do what we can. But there's lots that we can do. Thank you.
That's great. That's really good. If you can stop sharing the screen, Michaela, that would be really useful. We'll get everyone back.
Thank you, Michaela. That was really helpful. Can I ask, actually, think about questions, please, and put your hand up if you've got a question for Michaela. But can I ask if that presentation might be made available to us?
Yeah, what I'm planning to do, Rupert, will not only have the video of the presentation, but I'm going to put a PDF version of the slideshow onto the website. And everyone, all members will get sent a link to download it as well. So, because there was a lot of information in there, and hopefully we can all read over it again and absorb it. But really good, Michaela, fabulous information. As I say, I think, I mean, I'm going to get in with the first question, if I may, Rupert, just for you post them. How long, in your experience, you've treated so many people with anxiety, how long does it take to control the beast, to make that breakthrough? I'm sure everyone has their own set, but is there an average? Is it days, weeks, months? And how hard do we have to work at it?
It's hugely variable. Firstly, it's actually identifying that, yes, what I'm feeling is coming from anxiety, or it's coming from this, it's coming from that, and being able to really kind of compartmentalize the particular triggers that you're having and what you're responding to. It's when you're able to acknowledge that, yes, I am feeling anxiety, as well as the other difficulties that I'm having. And I would just take this time to just point out, having an anxiety response does not make you an anxious person. It makes you a person having a response that is anxiety. So very different things. But it's finding, some people find the particular thing that helps reduce that quite quickly and easily, and are quite sort of self-aware as to what makes them happy and what relaxes them. Some people, it can take a bit more time as they try out different things. Generally, the ones that I'm finding that are really struggling to find what exactly is driving a lot of the anxiety seem to be a lot more helped by the hypnotherapy, because sometimes these triggers are actually not what we're thinking they're coming from and are being driven by something else, and hypnotherapy actually helps identify that and hopefully resolve it or find ways of dealing with it.
Right.
So, for example, I saw someone quite some time ago that they'd had a lot of issues with work and with injuries at work, had lost their job and had lots of other things that they were really struggling with. We had a hypnotherapy session that dealt with sort of letting go of the past 20 years that they'd had problems with from the injuries from work, but they were still having a lot of anxiety that was triggering some feelings of dizziness. And the next hypnotherapy session that we did, actually it came out that they were really, really anxious about what kind of parent they were, which took both of us completely by surprise. And they walked out of the session just going, well, now I know what I need to do. Now I know what I'm actually dealing with. And the difference is absolutely remarkable, because we've actually been able to identify what the underlying thing was, and it wasn't what either of us thought it was.
Can I just ask, that is everybody kind of aware of how hypnotherapy works? Is everyone clear on that, or can we know? Michaela, can you just explain a little bit about how hypnotherapy works?
So it's not what you see on TV. It is not stage hypnosis. It's not that whole make you quack like a duck or any of that kind of stuff. The hypnotherapy, it's to help kind of bypass that logical, thought-driven process part of the brain that we like to try and live our everyday life by, and it helps tune into the subconscious part of the brain. Now, your logical part of the brain deals with in language, in words. The subconscious part of the brain doesn't have language. It deals with things by images, by sound, by feeling. So you can have that physical response to something that you're completely unaware of what triggered it, but your subconscious has picked up something that's reminded it of something. So by bypassing the logical part of the brain, just by relaxation and sort of kind of talking slightly differently to it, the logical part of the brain stops trying to justify and explain what's happening, and we can look more at just what you're feeling and try and sort of deal with that a little bit more. But you are completely in control. You are aware of what's going on the whole time. I can't make you do anything that you wouldn't want to do. I'm not going to make you share anything that you don't want to share. If needs be, you don't have to talk to me at all, and we can just kind of work through things sort of just while you kind of talk to yourself in your head, which sounds odd but surprisingly effective. But it's generally, it's a really lovely, enjoyable thing. If that kind of explains things. It's such a hard one to explain.
Yeah. Well, if anyone's got any questions about that, please just put your hand up or something, or put it in the chat box. That'd be great. Let's go to another question then. Should we start off with Susie? Susie Lambert, you've got a question for Michaela about food, supplements. Where are you, Susie? Hopefully Kevin is unmuting you.
So many on the meeting. We've got.
I know.
I'm using 2 screens to see everyone.
Yeah.
So
I think I'm unmuted.
There we go. There we are. Susie.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I just had a question about supplements. I'm trying to follow a good diet, as you put it, although I'm struggling a bit with the pandemic. But are there any additional supplements that you would recommend that we could be taking that might be helping us?
But I'm not a dietitian or a nutritionist. Normally, if you're able to follow a good, healthy diet, that should ideally cover everything that you need. Vitamin D supplements can be quite helpful, but you don't want to be overdoing it. So just, if needs be, just getting a multivitamin from your Holland and Barrett or wherever the local places that deal with these kinds of things. Just a simple multivitamin thing should be fine if needed.
All right, Susie, hope that helps.
Completely outside of that, obviously, if you've got Meniere's or migraine, then there are slightly more specific dietary suggestions for that.
And I always have to have at this stage, Michaela, I've had Meniere's for 16 years. Strongly recommend red wine. It's very good.
Thanks, Kevin. Should we move on? Deborah actually says vitamin D is supposed to be helpful for COVID. Thanks.
Yeah, so I'm not a dietitian, nutritionist, and I'm not a doctor, but vitamin D can be very helpful for BPPV. And my understanding is there is some suggestion that vitamin D may be helpful with COVID, but I'm not a doctor and I don't know all the evidence on this.
Before we go to Sandra's question, Sandra's put a question in the chat box. We'll come to you in a second, Sandra. Can I just go back to the COVID thing, just because we've mentioned it, and you mentioned that there's no evidence of any sort of link between, you know, balance issues and COVID. Is that something? Is that being researched that you're aware of? Is that how do you know that?
That, as far as I'm aware, there's not specific research at the moment, particularly with balance and COVID, but I mean there is a lot of research being done in all sorts of things with COVID, and to my knowledge balance things haven't cropped up particularly in that. So it's, yeah, if it's not cropping up in all the research at the moment, if it does, it's possibly negligible.
All right, let's move on to Sandra's question. Sandra Black, Kevin.
Okay. Sandra, if you can
unmute yourself.
Yeah.
I think Sandra's having problems.
Zoom appears to have changed, where I can only request people unmute. I used to have the power of silence.
Oh, you can't do it now. Has it changed?
Can you hear
Sandra,
me?
go ahead. Yeah.
Well, there was a couple. One was to do with hypnotherapy. Michaela, when something is identified, do you feel that, like in the example that you gave, that's healing in itself? Because
Exactly.
something is realized, or when you realize something, what do you then do with, well, it's not just this, it's that then is that enough, or do you then have to deal with the assumptions about that? Or I mean, you took an example that it was parenting really that was the worry rather than something else. So then what? She had to change her parenting or not worry so much? I mean, how do you go from there?
So for that particular example, that actual realization that that's what they were worrying about gave them that opportunity to sit back and go, okay, this is what I'm doing at the moment. Is this really what I want to do and how I want to do it? And if not, actually, this is what I would like to do. And they could start to implement what they were wanting to do rather than doing things as they had been and that they were worrying about. So for some people, yeah. Sorry, some people, yes.
Some action.
Sorry, say again.
So it would lead to some action or change of something, the realization.
Yeah, it's very much a ripple effect.
Michaela, if I'd just give a personal example with myself. When I first got Meniere's 2004, I thought my life was over. I had no idea what it was, never heard of it, never had a balance problem. It's easy to look back now and see what was going on. My initial panic, I was trying to run my own business. I'd got a mortgage, 4 children, a wife, and I thought my life was over. And it took a great deal of time to understand that it was not actually the balance condition that was the issue. It was obviously a major issue with the symptoms and not leaving my house, whatever, drive again. But what was really bothering me was the financial impact of the condition. But I didn't get that to begin with. And it took an awful long time to realize that I was powerless over Meniere's. Nobody knows where it comes from, why it happens, and how to cure it. And the biggest threat to me, I'd seen statistics that I was probably 60–70% likely to get it on the other side of my head as well, and potentially lose all my hearing. And that just meant, wow, you won't be able to run your business, you won't pay your mortgage, you won't keep a roof over your head, you won't support your kids and your wife. And so the health issue wasn't the real driver of my fear. It was the money. Now, realizing that, what was the benefit? Well, the benefit was I started worrying less about if Meniere's was going to come onto my second side, because I had no control over it. And it could happen tomorrow, the next week, the next month, or never. But what I could do was, while Meniere's wasn't on my other side, I was able to find a way to work. So if I could focus on trying to make money, that was going to soothe my anxiety and my fear. And it's exactly what I did. The irony now is it took many years to get me focused in business, to run a good business. So I think often the root causes of our fears are hidden by what we see as the obvious cause, may not be so. And don't get me wrong, I still worry to this day, will I get Meniere's on my good side? It could be tomorrow, but I don't lose sleep over it anymore because I've got no control over it. So if it happens, I know I'll deal with it. I also know the benefit of this support group and other work I've done in the Balance community. Even if I got it on the second side, there's still a wonderful life ahead of me that I will live. And that it's one of the key messages I think I give to everyone who I know has got anxiety or depression. Things will get better. If it's not in terms of medication, of treating something like, you can't cure Meniere's, things will get better because I'd learn how to manage things in a better way, manage my symptoms. Most importantly, I think what Michaela's telling us, we can all learn to manage our minds in a better way, but it's not easy. And it's like anything, I think takes an awful lot of practice. I'm going to shut up again.
I think, yeah, I was going to say, shush, because Sandra, I think you still got another question, but can we come back to you on that? Because I just want to hear from Nicola, if you don't mind. Nicola, is it Nicola? Who said she's actually had some hypnotherapy with Michaela. Nicola, if you want to switch yourself on.
Hi.
Hi.
Just briefly describe what it's like.
It's not like, I was worried it was going to be something like you'd seen on the TV, you know, that type of thing. It was just more, we did a lot of talking and just visualising things in my mind and going into situations more or less to distract me from the thoughts that I was having and the anxiety that I was getting. I found it was, I don't know, the thoughts I were having were not sort of real sort of thing. It was things that I was worried about going to happen, and I got to sort of confront those. And yeah, it's quite a strange thing to sort of explain, but it was really, really helpful.
Sandra, does that help?
Yes, it does a bit. I mean, right. Following what Kevin said, I realised that, I mean, I had to give up my work altogether after 35 years. And again, like you, I think, as well as feeling I wasn't myself anymore, I was worried about money. But I realised I could rent a room in my home. And I did that. I did that just before the lockdown. And I just wanted it for a month. I didn't want to have someone for too long because I'm living on my state pension now. But having someone just for a month, and you can just stipulate that in an ad. And I got someone, she was really nice, and she stayed for a month. But that bumped up my... And I know that I can do that. That's the thing. I feel I've got some control now. And I don't want to go back to work. That's the last thing I want to do now. It's a release that I don't have that responsibility anymore. But I was worried about money. I think that was part of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was good. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Sandra. We did have another question, and it's Deborah, I think, has a question for you. Deborah, do you want to ask it yourself? I mean, it may not be that she can answer this directly straight away, but please ask away. I think you're still on mute, Deborah.
Deborah,
are you able to unmute yourself? No, you're still on mute. There we go. That's it.
There we go.
No, oh, you had it. You had it a minute ago.
Try again, Deborah.
Yay.
Right. Hi, I'm Deborah. I'm interested in finding out if there's any hypnotherapists in the North East which Michaela could recommend, so I could try that to see if it would help me. I mean, obviously she might not have that at her fingertips, but she may be able to let me know separately. Okay.
That would be great.
Yeah, I don't know any offhand. I have recently started doing a little bit of hypnotherapy online. It's a bit different doing hypnotherapy online than in person. Obviously, in person, I can see sort of all of you, so I can see a lot more body language in person than I can online. But I'm actually getting some pretty good results with it online. So potentially we could look at something that way if that's possibly something you're interested in.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yes, yeah,
that's really helpful. I mean, overall, do you know many sort of other balance audiologists who deal with hypnotherapy? Clearly not. So yeah, she might be the only one possibly in the country. Look, I know I'm conscious because we've got more questions coming in as well, so I'd really like to get through some of these if that's okay. Simon, are you happy to unmute yourself and have a chat?
Yeah, I am. If you can hear me, yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, hi. It's more of a question to Michaela. It's really interesting what you've been saying. I've tried some mindfulness stuff, and I get and really get some comfort from it, where it's the guided talking and the listening. I tried one a few weeks ago, and it was about visualizing that you're in a boat going down a river, and I couldn't, and it was almost counterintuitive because as much as I tried, my brain, I couldn't visualize anything. And in the end, it sounds daft, but I started going into some sort of mantra and chanting to take my mind off of it. But I didn't know how you do these sort of hypnotherapy with people who just can't visualize things.
It doesn't matter if you can't visualize.
Right.
Your brain has other ways of working for you. So if you're more sort of auditory driven, if you work better with sounds, and you find music helps you sort of tune out of things a little bit better, then that's great. Some people deal more in touch. That doesn't mean I'm going to be touching people. That's not what I'm meaning. But everybody has kind of their preferred sense, and I can kind of really get why, as a balance patient, your brain is going, nope, not doing that one. So it's finding the right way for you, and just that one just happened to really not be right for you. So
super.
There'll be other things. So it's adapting.
Yeah, certainly the guided talking ones, I do find them, and sometimes when I'm really in a bad place, I'll put them on, put the noise cancelling headphones on, put it on a 30-minute session, and then wake up 3 hours later. And I can go to sleep on a 15-minute session and wake up without a worry in the world. And so, yeah, I'd endorse what you've said. It's really beneficial.
Brilliant. It works.
Cool.
Thank you, Simon. Shall we, a great question from Julia. Do you want to unmute yourself, Julia? Or do you want me to ask the question?
Yeah,
no, great, go for it.
Hello, I'm new to this.
Hi.
I think I'm a bit more at the less severe than some of the other people. I suffer greatly with anxiety generally, and I just wanted to know whether you take the approach that you should face the thing that you're frightened of and do it anyway, because that's a way of getting rid of the anxiety, doing it more and more and more until it becomes normal, or you should avoid it, because if you do it, you're going to get dizzy, and that's going to make the anxiety worse.
It's about.
I can give an example. I used to be a bit of a runner, and I would like to get back into running, but the thought of it frightens me. So should I do it, or should I think, oh no, that'll make me dizzy, I mustn't do it?
Do it.
Can I just interrupt and ask before you answer that, Michaela, because I know she is one, or certainly involved in running in some shape or form. Kelly is frantically nodding her head. Okay. Kelly, do you want to respond to that one first?
I think it's really difficult, and I'm like, for me, when I was first diagnosed with my balance disorder, like I couldn't do anything, even just like basic things couldn't do. But then I've like managed to build up, and I started to run because people were like, oh, try and do a bit of exercise. And I think for me, just building it up really gradually. So if you find, I don't know, like just running for like a minute, or like there's lots of like, I've been using whilst we've been in lockdown, like a couch to 5k and there's couch to 10k type apps. So if you've not had kind of you've had quite a lot of time out, you can use those to sort of build it up. But I can tell you it's so much better, like I find for me, to kind of do that. And in a really strange way, I almost find the sort of the rhythm of when you're running almost kind of counteracts the kind of the wobbliness you feel with your balance disorder and the anxiety. So, you know, I went from never running before to I ran the London Marathon a couple of years ago. So it is achievable. So I would absolutely recommend you run.
Because I went for a tiny run the other day just to try it, and the running was okay, but when I got home I couldn't get my breathing back, obviously because I'm totally unfit now, and I went into a massive panic because of my breathing, and I felt so dizzy. I just lay down and I had a massive panic attack.
Can I just, sorry, Michaela, and I know Kevin's got experience because you've just restarted, started running again, Kevin, but Michaela, from your point of view, I mean, that's a really good, so she's done a little bit, struggled with the breathing, had a bit of a panic attack. Michaela?
So certainly it's important to do these things. Avoiding everything that makes you feel anxious is actually going to make things worse, because it's going to pipe up that anxiety about the whole situation. Right. So yes, doing it, but it's going at it in a very, very graduated way, as Kelly said. Absolutely hit the nail on the head there. Now, when you went for a little run, what kind of little are we talking about? I used to be able to run 5 miles, but I only went for a mile this time. Or is it I went out for a minute and ran for a minute and then walked the rest? And
no, I used to be able to run like 17k around there, and I went for 2.5 kilometers and I walked some of it.
That's a fair
really
distance.
Slow. Really slow.
I think Julia just too less.
Hang on, one at a time. Kevin, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, just, what you did before caused that breathing problem, so do probably half that distance. And Julia, have someone with you. There's going to be less panic when you finish. I believe it not, even in some of the bad days, many as I would try and get on my mountain bike just as a challenge, but only do that when you feel it's safe enough to do, because you obviously could have a bad accident. My approach was always to try and challenge myself. So I was lucky I got an old treadmill at home, and even when I really didn't feel like walking, I would try and walk. I can't, because none of us live parallel lives, we can never tell what would be if we didn't do these things. So it's always hard to say, well, that definitely worked for me. But exercise, everyone will tell you, whatever your balance condition, you need to find ways of exercising, because your body's not going to recover anywhere near as quick if it's not fit. Just saw a cat.
That's little Kitty making her
Thank you, Julia. I hope that helps.
Thank you,
Kelly. Thank you, Kevin, as well. Michaela, just on that point, I think, can we just go back then briefly to the importance of doing the exercises that people are given? I think for me, that really helps even before you try running and jumping and whatever else you're going to do, is to keep up with the visual vestibular exercise, isn't it?
Please.
How vital are they? I know they look stupid, and I know that sticking your hand in front of your face and doing this is hard, and it messes with your head. But if you don't get those bits right, I don't think you can go out running just yet.
No. To start to retune the actual function of the balance system in the ears, we have got to stimulate it. The brain has got to find out what it is that's going on so that it can respond to it and adjust for it. If you avoid everything that makes you feel bad, you're not going to change anything. Your brain has got to have that information. The exercises that we give are particular. We give them to you for a reason, and we give them in the way that we give them for a reason. We want to stimulate the balance. We want to find that level where what we're doing feels unpleasant, but it's bearable. If you're doing them and you think, this is just, I cannot do this, it's just too much, I cannot do it, talk to us, because we need to adapt the exercises to bring them down to a level that actually is more suitable for you at that moment in time. But if you do them every now and then because you don't really like them, nothing's going to change. The brain has got to have that information over and over and over and over. There's actually studies that demonstrate it's forging new neural pathways in the brain. So like when you're a child, your brain has got all these connections waiting to be made in the brain, but it only learns by doing. So if you're not doing, it's not going to learn.
And repeating the exercises.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think this is possibly a general question from Susie about tips on reducing fatigue. Well, I mean, Michaela, fatigue and dizziness when using, things on the computer like Zoom, for instance. Anybody got any tips, as well as Michaela? Should we start with Michaela?
So it brings us back to that whole respecting what your body is telling you. It's very tempting to say, right, I need to do this, so I'm going to get all of it done and then I can rest. Actually, what you need to do is try and break things down if you can and do things little and often. That is a lot more bearable for your brain to deal with and will feel an awful lot better. If your body is screaming that I'm just so tired, I can't keep my eyes open and I just feel so overwhelmed, you've pushed it past the point of it being good for you. Learn to listen to what your body's telling you when it's starting to say, I'm starting to struggle with this. I don't think I can do much more. That's probably about the point where you kind of back off a little bit, do something else or give yourself a rest and come back to it. So Zoom meetings can be a bit more difficult because obviously there's not always something that you can leave and come back to, but you don't have to do Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting. You can potentially listen to it and just rest your eyes and look at something else for a bit, depending on what it is that you're doing.
If I mean, for me, I don't know, I was in about 4 Zoom meetings yesterday back to back, and that about killed me. It was absolutely exhausting. Don't do that. Try not to schedule them all in one go. Catherine has also put in the chat box that she's got glasses from Amazon that cut out the blue light from the screens. So if we can see Catherine, she's actually wearing them now. There she is, Catherine. She's got her hand up.
Yes.
Catherine,
Hi.
can you just Amazon? Are they fairly cheap? What are they? Just explain what they are.
I'm a psychotherapist, and because of the pandemic, I'm in New Jersey, right where the epicenter was, and I had to move my practice into my home. And April 4th is when I had my first episode. Terrible. The whole weekend I was so sick. And actually, one of my clients told me that you can get these glasses on Amazon. They come in all different colors and styles. They're like $19.99, $20 here, to block the blue light from the screens. Because of HIPAA, I have to use Zoom or FaceTime. I'm very lucky if there's somebody who's old and doesn't have webcam and I do the landline, it gives my eyes a break. but I've had to cut my practice by 30%, I would say, because of what happened to me. Yeah.